Follicles are not just for hair. You can use a follicle as a very sophisticated form of surface constraint that will respond to deformations and can also allow you to animate objects across deforming surfaces. So this is a very useful technique that I'm going to show you here. What we've got in this scene is a ground plane, and it has a wave deformer applied to it. If we go into the channel box here, you will see inputs wave, click on that, and you'll see amplitude. Let me set that to a value of 0.1 and press play in the timeline. And you can see that we've got some animation there. I've just animated the offset value here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this cone stick to that deforming surface and even animate the cone across that surface so that it will always be precisely normal to the surface or sticking straight out from it. And we'll use the N-hair follicles to do it. Okay, I'll set my amplitude back down to 0 here, rewind back to frame 1. And I just want to create 1 or 2 follicles on this surface. With that surface selected, go up to the N-hair menu and choose Paint Hair Follicles options. And reset the options. And just click to create a few follicles. Looks like I've got about 4 follicles there now. Once that's done, I can close these windows and open up the outliner, window outliner. And I just want to delete everything except for 1 follicle. Let's get in closer here. So I don't need the hair system, nucleus, or PFX hair. I'll just delete all of those. And under hair system follicles, I'll delete all of them except 1. And there's also a curve associated with that. I don't need that either, so I can delete it. And then finally, there's a group node here. I'll just select that and ungroup. Edit, ungroup. And now we've just got a follicle that's sitting on that surface and nothing else. Okay, so let's go back to selecting that surface, back to the wave deformer and set the amplitude up to 0.1 once again, and play it, and you'll see that the follicle is staying stuck to that surface. It's very small and kind of difficult to see, but it is staying stuck to that surface. Okay, great. So now I'm going to set the amplitude back down to 0. And I'm going to move this object so it's directly over that follicle and then link it. I'll do that in the top and side views. So I'll tap the space bar, go over to the top view and tap the space bar there. Grab the move tool, dolly in closer, and then move that cone so it's directly over the follicle. Get in a little bit closer. Very good. Tap the space bar, go to the side view or front view, whichever. Tap the space bar and move that cone down. You'll notice that the follicle is pointing downward instead of up. That won't affect anything, but if that bothers you, you can select it, and then in the channel box under the shape node, you can turn flip direction on. Just type in a 1 or type in the word on, and that'll cause the follicle to point upward instead of downward. Okay, and now all I have to do is link the cone to the follicle. Curiously, you cannot use constraints, and it has to be a hard parent-child link. I'll do that by middle mouse dragging the cone onto the follicle. And now the cone is a child of the follicle as seen here. Cool. So tap the space bar again. Go back out to the perspective view, tap the space bar, select the plane, go into the wave deformer, turn the amplitude up to 0.1. And there you go. You can see that that cone has rotated. And if I press play in my timeline, you can see that the cone is stuck to that surface permanently. Very cool, and that was very easy. To try to do this with animation constraints is very kind of difficult. Here, it's really simple. And additionally, we can animate that follicle. Remember, we can move a follicle in U and V space. We can also animate that. I'll select the follicle and go over to parameter U and parameter V, and I can use the channel box sliders to move that anywhere on the surface I want. But it's best if we go up to the channel box slider options here. I'll click the manipulator button a couple of times until these other icons light up. Remember, this is the speed of the channel box slider. We want it to be very slow, so we'll click that a couple of times until we're in slow mode. And we also want hyperbolic on, which means we'll just have better control. So I'll click on that arrow, make it a curved arrow, which means we have hyperbolic channel box sliders. And then just select parameter U, the name, and middle mouse drag in the viewport. And we can keyframe that as well. So I can go to frame 1 of my timeline, frame 1, and then right-click on parameter U and key selected. And then go down to the last frame, just fast forward down to the end, and then middle mouse drag with parameter U selected. Move that over, and then right-click and choose key selected. Rewind and play back, and there you go. We have an object that is staying precisely connected to a surface, even though that surface is deforming. And we can even animate the movement of the object across that surface. And it's all done through the magic of follicles. And that concludes our chapter on follicles in nHair.